All right, here we are. So
Hello.
welcome. Hi,
Hey,
Ken. How are you doing?
hanging in there, living the dream, right?
Living the dream. I know. So, for those of you out there, Ken and I have been friends for a while. Oh man, we don't need to go down it, but
Mm.
since MPS
Oh,
was
yeah.
a
That's
little
the thing.
springling back in the
Yeah.
day.
Yeah.
So we've known each other for a while. I've always admired Ken for the black and white analysis, the technical prowess, and things like that. Now he's got a brand new book out, which of course interests me, but I think will interest a lot of other folks. Ken, so I want to talk about it. I just want to go through it. Maybe I'll pull up the table of contents. Maybe we won't need to do that.
Yeah, that's fine.
But so Ken, you are. I would describe you as a technocrat. There's military in your background
Yep.
because I can
That's right.
tell that from organizational skills,
That's right.
and no nonsense, to the point.
Yep.
But there is there's a passion there when to make things right, to make things good, to make things
Yeah.
right. To yeah, I'm butchering it, but that's what I know about you. That's what I'd like an audience to know, that technically knows his stuff, can apply it to business, which a lot of people who are technoheads can't make that bridge,
Yeah.
and has done it
Yeah.
in the past, and has a new book. And what's the title of it? Burn This Baby Down. What's it called, Ken?
Something close to that. Yeah. Burn this project down, right? So it's burn that project down. It's a salty guide to help project leaders stand out without burning out. That's the whole goal, right? So standing out's one thing, burning out's the other side of that, right?
Wow,
Yes.
perfect. Yeah. So you say salty. I like that. So it's
Yeah.
like almost not a curmudgeon.
It is close to curmudgeon, but I try to remain that nice little dash and pinch of optimism in there. So it's pragmatic,
There
maybe
you go.
not pessimistic, pragmatic. Right.
I know. I love it.
Yeah.
So when you say project, we're talking about IT projects. What give me a
Yeah, I think,
scope.
I mean, my background is really going to be technology-based projects, software development projects
Oh, okay.
for corporate America. So that's really where a lot of my stories are going to come from. Is it applicable to other types of projects? Sure. But I think the hallmarks are there. But I think in general, a lot of my history comes in managing high-speed, low-drag projects that end up becoming high drag that you have to then kind of carve out and streamline. A lot of complicated technology stacks, a lot of different stakeholders that have different competing interests, and global
Hmm.
teams as well too. So that's the other side of the discussion point, is really trying to help people navigate the basics,
Hmm.
but through a lens of I try to make it approachable.
Right.
You know, whether
Well,
it's successful or not, who knows?
well, it is. I dove in a little bit, and with these things, like I said earlier, I don't like to get. I like to come at this cold. Although I did look at some stuff, grab the
Yeah,
book,
yeah,
did a little bit, but I like to do it cold. It's just like
sure,
anyone else is like, okay, why would I want to read this?
yeah, sure.
Yeah, engaging for sure. So, but the scope of the project you're talking about, are we in? I'll boil it down to say, because we both know copier dealerships,
Hmm. Hmm.
right?
Hmm.
They've all got projects,
Yeah, sure.
assumedly.
Yeah,
It could be anywhere from 50 to 100 employees in that range, as well as, now you mentioned global projects as well.
sure.
So we're talking anything scaling from SMB up to enterprise and
Yeah,
technology, right? So an example
yeah,
would be like a banking or global banking company that wants to implement XYZ
yep, that's right.
inside their existing
Yeah,
thingamajig or whatever that
yeah,
is, right?
that's right. Yeah, or commercial roadmaps for products. So I'm not getting into the technicals of the specifics of how you would manage an agile project versus
Okay.
how you would manage a waterfall project.
Okay.
What I'm really looking to try to do is to help project managers, and ideally what, the story I have really is that I looked around at an organization I was working in, and I head up, various stakeholders in a technical role, and the organization has project managers, and the project managers are cross-functional. And so I'm working with this young project manager who has all the check boxes for the technicals of
Hmm.
managing the project, moving it forward, the Gantt charts, the all the burn down charts, all the things need to happen. But the stakeholders just really didn't have any respect for the individual, and so it was really a kind of high friction
Oh,
management. All the soft skills weren't there. So
right.
I use that lens to kind of think about, what would I have done differently? How could I help coach and mentor? And I'm in a phase in my life that I want to give back. And so, I tell people I started out with a blog post. It turned into a chapter. The chapter turned into three. And before you know it, I've got a book. And so it's one of those things that for me, I really wanted to kind of help others that manage projects, whether in title or not, understand some of the things you need to know. Like for instance, one of the things I learned from our good friend Daryl Amy and Corey Smith many years ago was your brand. I talk about brand. I talk about the emotional shackles of work and how not to become too invested, but you also need to understand the game you're playing with the politics.
Right.
And so there's all of these things, the dynamics of the things that were hard for me, that were really challenging lessons, that if I could help another person see that, they might not necessarily be ready to recognize they have to do it, but I can give them the idea of these are the things you're going to run into in your career as a project manager or as an executive running projects, right? Growing
Right.
teams, things like that. You could be a sales professional that's running a sales team that has
Absolutely.
to deal with, you're planning your new kickoff for the year or something like that. So these are things that if you have any logistical responsibilities whatsoever, it's there for you and to help you understand some of the softer skills that are there.
Ken,
Right?
that is great.
Yeah.
Seriously, the soft skills, because and I almost I was going down that path, right? You think of
Mhm.
project management, you think of projects, you think of technology,
Yep.
certifications, keystrokes, programming, if
Yep.
then blah blah blah,
Yeah.
all those technical thingamajiggers,
That's
Gantt
right.
charts, PERT
Right.
charts. What?
There's already a ton of that stuff out there. You don't
Right.
need that, right?
Yeah.
Yep. What people don't get is they don't get all of the things about, like, how do you manage through a change? Do you understand the 3 levels of resistance you're going to run into when you're dealing with the change, right? How do you deal
Nobody
with
does
time
that.
boxing? No, they
Yeah.
don't. Yeah, there's not a lot. I have never really found a lot of
I was
resources
gonna say.
outside of leadership books. Now, so there are leadership books that talk about some of
Yeah.
these things in kind of couched terms, but what I try to
Yeah.
do is I try to open every chapter with a story about here's how this particular aspect is going to really impact you, whether it be talking about my time as in the crucible in the Marine Corps, where embracing the suck is how you just have to learn how to blow bubbles in the mud, right? These are some of the emotional components you have to come to grips with when
Yeah.
you're living through this. Or you deal with the more practical things of understanding the politics and the games that you have to play and choosing to be there actively instead of being there passively and feeling like a victim. I talk about, the iron triangle of project management. So you talk about the technicals, I talk about the softer side of that, where time boxing is not a weapon. It can be an effective tool to use, but a lot of managers use time boxing as a weapon.
Okay,
right?
okay. But before we, so two things you mentioned that I want to
Yep.
clear: the iron triangle.
Yep.
I've heard of it, but give me
Oh yeah,
the.
so the iron triangle with project management is classically your waterfall projects, where you're going to be looking at your time, your resources, and your budget, and that's going to have kind of this impact on quality, right?
Okay.
So that's where that iron triangle comes
All
in.
right.
So we talk about that from that perspective of these are the non-negotiables in the project.
Right.
You're always going to have to deal with those 3 impacting quality, right?
Okay.
One way or the other.
And
So
those
that's
are almost spreadsheetable. I'll
Yes.
use that
Yeah.
word. Okay.
Well, like PMI has very robust calculations for understanding all that stuff, right? So if you
Okay.
ever want to understand time, money, value management, they've got all that. I mean, it's what you grow up on. It's how, and many organizations don't use it, right?
Oh.
They just kind of wing it. They just expect
Well,
that.
yeah. I
Most
can
of your
see that.
project managers get thrown into this, and they think, okay, well, it's on paper, it's running a meeting, having a PowerPoint deck, sending some emails, and they never mentor them and teach them all the things that you have to understand about stakeholder management and Project 101, right? I mean,
Right.
huge, huge.
So when you and stakeholder management and it's really wonderful that you're talking about. I just spoke to someone, I think it was beginning of this week. It's a blur. We're talking about sales training, sales
Mm.
process training,
Mhm.
right?
Mhm.
And almost the same tact as what you're talking about.
Yep, it is.
Not the technical side of selling,
Yep.
but the other side and,
The other side, yep.
the soft side.
Psychology of it.
So yeah, but that's great. No one, I don't ever remember seeing a technical brief on something like that, or of course, well, no, never from
There's
any of the
not.
technical
No,
training.
there's not.
No.
You pay a lot of money to go to good classes about that kind of stuff, or you do what I did and you branch out into leadership training,
Yeah,
like John Maxwell or something like that, right?
that's self-driven stuff. So you're right. If a project manager comes in, this is baptism by fire, like everything else, school of hard knocks.
That's it.
What, if you can, not to steal anything, but give me an example of what is typically school of hard knocks.
Oh gosh, yeah, school of hard. I mean, rule number 101 is brand. I mean, that is like
Okay.
it is we talk about the speed of trust with Stephen Covey. It's one of the Coveys.
Right.
And that the idea I talk about in brand is that I got introduced to this with Daryl and Corey a
Yep.
ways back, where I was focused on pouring into the company brand, and that was my job. But what I had to understand was that I had to maintain my own personal brand. And your personal brand started off with me trying to understand how people perceive me in the company that I worked in, right?
Okay.
And so this was
That makes
a
sense.
copier printer dealer that
Yep.
was looking to learn how to do IT stuff. So it was a systems integrator, right? And so my brand, I had to learn how to build trust with a sales team, and that would that I talk about that in the book. Actually, I mention moving from capitalized assets into operating leases, and I talk about the trust that we had to get to with the fact that me trying to sell what I was trying to sell and help the organization grow into a services led operation as
Yeah.
opposed to how a sales team was focused on selling widgets and very good at it. They were expert at what they were doing. I was still trying to figure out how to help them get to where they needed to go as a company, and we were at odds with each other. And
Yeah.
so I talk about my experiences and trying to really recognizing that I had to flip the script and learn how to help them get what they needed. But part of that was the brand, right? So like I had to learn that my brand required trust, and my brand that I wanted to put out was this idea that I can help you get what you needed to get. You can trust me. I'm
Mhm.
going to be steady as she goes, and I'm going to help you get there. I always joke around with my sales colleagues. I love working. I love going on sales calls and talking with customers with a salesperson, because I'd always joke, if you make the promises, I'll keep them. Right?
I knew you were going to say that.
Yeah. So classic, right? Classic operations guy here. So my job was to figure out the puzzle pieces and how to get all that working, right? So that's where I think a lot, what I recognized over the years, though, is that brand, as I grew up, it wasn't just my brand inside the company.
Right.
I had to start learning how to understand what I was about.
Right.
That's where my brand became, I stepped into authenticity and authority. It was weird because the more I connected with self and the more I became authentic with myself, the more I began to recognize that I didn't have to worry about pandering to stakeholders. I could just be.
Just
And that
be.
helped me set my boundaries, maintain my boundaries, be authentic, and people responded to that.
Mm-hmm.
They
Mm-hmm.
actually gravitated. I became magnetic more
You
so.
attract the right ones too.
Exactly.
So,
Exactly. Yep.
wow.
Yep.
Wow.
That's one of the classic examples that is
Well,
School of Hard Knocks.
I like that a lot. So,
Yeah.
when you, so let me see if I can sum up. You've got, and this is a terrible example, but I'm going to use it because people know. You've got right brain stuff,
Yep.
screwdrivers and bolts, and then you've got
Yep.
left brain,
Yep.
whatever. Now that's a fallacy. It's no longer true, but that's the example, right? So,
Yeah.
so when you're branding, quote unquote branding, you're living, not living up. What are you doing? You're defining you think of it as a profile. It is
Yeah.
now and it's a personal. If I'm wrong, tell me. But it's
Mhm.
your personal profile that really doesn't depend or matter on who you're working for,
It
right?
That's the funny thing is that a lot of people make the mistake that it does,
Right.
but I finally recognize that I can kind of be who I want to be, and that's where I talk about playing the game, right? So Ross Perot talks about the fact that I think what he says is war
Ken, you're
has
gonna hate
rules,
me. Describe who,
politics, huh?
describe who Ross Perot is,
Oh, dude, yeah,
because I know you know. It's like
yeah. Ross Perot is a fairly well-renowned figure from our era that was a very successful business person that decided to run for office, and
right.
uh, you know,
EDS,
yeah,
EDS.
EDS was his big thing. Sold off to, I believe it was Dell at the time, and it kind of moved up through that way. But I think the quote from Ross Perot was that I think what he said was war has rules, wrestling has rules, but politics doesn't have rules,
Yeah.
right? So we talk about like the idea of the alignment that I would get to in brand is that you need to be very clear about who you are and know what you're about, because you also need to understand the game you're playing and the rules of that game before you even have a chance to decide if you want to be in the game or not.
Hmm.
A lot of folks just, they're in the game. I got a job. Great. I'm going to just be here. And they don't realize all of the other things that go on with it. So if you're answering an email, if you're participating in a meeting, if you're responding to, a Slack or a Teams message, you're actively participating and choosing that a lot of people don't really recognize that. And what I'm really encouraging in this book is take some ownership of the outcomes that are happening. And that's where your brand really begins to stand out. At that point is you actively participate in your own outcomes, right?
Right.
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 None of this victim triangle stuff, which
No.
I talk about that in the book too, is like, all the other side of the burnout and how you get there.
Right.
And that's happened to
Right.
me. Right.
Yeah. Wow.
Yeah.
All right. Well, and you know what? It's interesting now is that the timing, right? This has been in your head for a while, I'm
It
guessing. It
has.
came out,
Yeah.
but the timing now, and I'll go back to the fear of COVID, work from home. And I'm
Mhm.
big on this. It's like it changed everything for
Yeah.
people now, like you and I and a bunch of us. And we're not the only ones, but we were. What was the word? We were remote
Yeah.
back then.
Yeah.
When
Yeah.
you don't have a job. That's the response. No, I work anywhere. Oh, if you didn't go to an office, if you didn't have you didn't have a real job. That's
Mhm.
shifted. That's
Mhm.
changed completely.
Sure.
Mentally.
Sure.
But it gives individuals who did think the way you described, right? We're in for the job. We're a 9 to 5ers. I answer the emails. I'm effectively numb to the machine because I'm part of the machine. To me, it woke people up to
Mhm.
say, well, maybe I don't need the Starbucks. I like this local guy. And then driving to the office 90 minutes a day or whatever it is to sit in meetings that are useless. That's not the best way to be. That's contributing to burnout. So that whole realization of that, and then everything started to point back to us. Well, I'm not being as real as I really am as I am when I'm 9 to
Mhm.
5 in the office. This is
Mhm.
the great enlightenment that is occurring for a lot of people that we don't get that much talking about, and that's exactly what you're talking about. Is
I think
you
so.
can't build your brand until you know who you are.
Yeah, I think that's true for a lot of people. I'm not sure if
Yes.
it's. I mean, it's a good. I think it's a realization that I wonder about a lot of times because like it's something for me that happened late. It's been growing, but it more so has happened in the last few years. To your point,
Right.
and it's
Yeah.
not just with COVID. It's with a lot of other events that have happened
Yeah.
in my life, and so I think with
Mhm.
when I talk with my daughter's generation, though, for instance, it's really
Yeah.
interesting with her that I mean, I think they try to understand their identity going into this,
Well,
and so it's weird. I don't know if it's a generational thing. I don't know if it's a timing thing. I don't
it's
know.
no, I'm glad you brought that up because I was just going to say right now
Hmm.
for us that would seem to be more difficult than it is for other folks coming up.
Yeah,
They naturally, without even calling it, know what a brand is,
yeah,
and
yeah,
it's because of their Instagram, their Twitter, their Facebook. The ugly side of that everyone knows about, but
yeah, yeah.
they are building their own brand without
They're
even
much
knowing.
more self-aware about things than I
Yes.
think we were at our age, at that age. Yeah,
No, we
I
didn't.
think so. Yeah.
Ignorance was bliss. It
Oh
still
yeah,
is
sure.
actually, but
Yeah,
you
yeah,
know, come to
yeah,
think of it.
yeah.
But yeah, I think you're right. And I'm with you. I don't like making this generational demographic thing, which I think is another thing to talk about. Maybe not here, but
Mhm.
I think the generations are blending now. I don't think there's as big as gap as there was in the 60s and maybe in the 50s. The generation gaps. I
I
think
think you're right.
technology is merging those two together. But regardless, okay.
And probably times too. Yeah, yeah.
The times. I mean, it's just it's everything all at once, everywhere. It's just changing. Okay.
Yeah.
See, we can do lots of rabbit holes.
It's always
So
good getting
then,
together and talking. I'm telling you, man. It
I
is.
know
Yeah.
one of the big things, themes of your book is to help people not burn out. Right?
Yeah.
Is that
Yeah.
okay?
Well,
So
really stand out without. So it's
yeah,
not
yeah,
just. So the thing that really bothered me a lot. I mean, this is really interesting that I think people really struggle with. Well, the only answer is binary. You have to just unhook to not burn out. That's not the answer, right?
right.
So what I'm trying to do is I'm trying to help both corporations and organizations. Let's say, I mean, maybe not just corporate America, but just corporations in general. And
Organization of corpse. Yeah,
yeah,
gotcha.
yeah, and I think I'm also trying to help the individuals. I mean, this book is written for
Yeah,
individuals, but if you're a good team leader, if you're a good manager, director, VP, whatever, you'll care about your people and you'll help them with these types of tools as well too. So it's really about you know I'm trying to help people understand the journey that happens, and a lot of what I'm doing is I'm seeding in information. I'm not trying to be prescriptive. I'm giving information based on my life experiences
Okay.
that has resonated with me, and other people share that it's resonated with them, and they share similar stories with me. And so the idea then is that, look, I have not actively burned out, but I have been really close, or in passive burnout, as I called it, where, for instance, I would wake up on a Saturday morning and veg and watch movies all day long just to get away from life. I wasn't fixing the house. I wasn't doing any kind of leisure activities. I wasn't
Mm,
investing in my family. I was just done with, like, life, and I had to kind of
mm.
recognize the fact that I had slipped into a victim mentality. I wasn't actively bemoaning my situation,
Right.
but I was using that day to, quote unquote, recharge from this week. And once I took ownership of that and started making changes in my health, I started making changes in a lot of different areas. Writing became my ministry again, to help me step back out of and recognize the power that I had. And by recognizing that, and adjusting my identity to not be solely my employer's responsibility, that I began to have a lot of freedom, right? And now there
Right.
are challenges. I can recognize those challenges, but I understand too that there's another side of that, and I don't have to
Yeah.
fall into burnout, right? That's what I'm offering.
That's pretty insightful, Ken. And that, boy, that is timely. And, you know, ministering, wow, that impacts. I hate to say it. What comes to mind right away is the burnout that destroys marriages,
Yeah, dude. Yeah, totally.
you
Totally.
know,
Yeah. Yeah.
because that does
That
happen.
that's the other side of it. I mean, I can tell you that I wasn't there for my family. I
Yeah. I
mean,
mean,
I said I was, and I was there in body,
yeah. Yeah.
but I wasn't really engaging like I needed to, you know?
So you're not you, but one becomes part of the machine, and then it
Yep.
comes out because we don't know what's happening on a Saturday
Yeah.
morning to
Yeah.
completely veg out,
Yeah.
disconnect, but disconnect from everything as opposed to engage in what's. And I'm paraphrasing and repeating
Mhm.
whatever, but you disconnect from everything, you become numb. I mean, it's classic stuff. It is
It
just
absolutely,
classic.
absolutely was. And that's the thing I had to recognize. And the thing is I don't villainize
No,
anybody in this
no,
book. So
no,
corporate
no.
America is not to blame for this. It is solely something that we have agency over, and that's something that's super
That's
important. That is
perfect.
really
Yeah.
lead us to hope. Hope is a construct, and agency is one of those pillars, right?
Yeah. Talk about that. That's a good statement. Hope is a construct. What
Yeah. Well, so I mean,
do you
there's
mean
there's
by that?
something that I had to learn. So as I've gone through what I've had to go through in my personal life, I a lot of people would just say things like, you know, just look on the bright side. Look at all the positives. Don't just focus on the negatives. And all of these innocent sayings that are quite flippant.
Flippant,
They don't
innocent.
realize the damage they do to somebody who is, depressed, or somebody who is chronically ill. Just have more faith. Just pray more. Those kinds of things, as if there's something that they're doing wrong or not doing right. And so what I recognized was that there's something called, I was wondering, why is it that we can't just be more hopeful? And there's something called hope theory. And hope theory, I don't get into this in my book per se, but I think hope theory is one of those things that we look at, and you have to have three components to have hope. And if I'm remembering this correctly, it is that you have to have kind of a name or a goal, right? And then you have to have a path that you're going to walk to get there. And then you have to have the agency, or the autonomy, the power to be able to get there.
Get
Okay.
to walk the path.
Without those three things, hope cannot exist, right? So
And and you need all three.
all three in some shape,
Okay,
form, or fashion. Like,
got it.
so if you look at if you look at your job as something that you feel hopeless about, if you can identify with the fact that you feel hopeless, and that the way you get out of that is you name what you want to do. Is it that I want to get higher in my career in the current company? Do I need a new company? Do I need to step out of corporate life altogether? Whatever that ends up being, that's your goal. And then you have to determine what are the steps I'm going to get there. One of the things that I often say is, self-study. If you want to learn about, Gen AI, start studying after hours and see what that does for you. If you want to learn about, but what I did with project management was I took a week off of work and I paid, money to go sit through a boot camp and got my PMP. That's what I
Okay.
did.
All right.
So I took my time to go become a project manager because I moved from the position I was in to I wanted to move from market research into software development, and that's the move that I made. And
Okay.
so there were steps I had to take, and the fact that I took those steps and had that path meant that I had the power to do that.
Okay.
Right?
Okay. Cool. So we could sum up those three things, right? You had a goal.
Yep.
You saw a path. Now, what was the path? The path was
The path was the steps I needed to take to get there. Right.
All right. So like engaging in a class, et cetera, et cetera.
Correct.
Finding. All right.
Correct.
And
One,
you had
two,
the
three.
agency because you decided to you had the power
Yep.
to
I had the budget
go.
to go pay for the class. I took the week off. I then invested in going out and looking for that next job.
Right.
I had the network to be able to look through and talk to people about that next job, those kinds of things, right?
So if you are in a situation that is missing one of those three,
Mm-hmm.
it's either hopeless,
Yep,
or you need to find the third or whatever
I mean,
how does that?
That's a tough one because
Okay.
you really have to be able to have that third. And what you then lean into at that point is that you have to begin leaning into something else to give you one of those three that you're missing. So for
Right.
instance, the reason that faith is so important is because it helps give you the fact that there is a purpose in what you're dealing with, and so that then leads you to, well, okay, that there's a new goal and a new path to follow, right? And so you can begin to kind of put up with the fact that a path isn't immediately apparent because it's hidden behind this faith, so to speak.
Right.
These are all things. The other piece is, we talk about awareness and I don't talk about this in the book, but one of the things I've learned in my journey is awareness and curiosity. I used to think that The Matrix was right. The movie The Matrix was right. You had to know why, right? I've learned in the last 2 years that The Matrix lied to me. Why doesn't matter in most cases. What matters is being aware of the reality of the situation, which is what I talk a lot about in my book, and your emotions about that. That's another thing I talk about is being in touch with and aware of your emotions, and then getting curious about how you feel and then what you can do about that. So it's out, in, out, right? That's that's the focus, right?
Wow.
Yeah, it's crazy stuff. I mean,
that's good stuff though.
Yeah.
So, and I can imagine that is incorporated in the content of your book, or at least the philosophies of that. Those philosophies support whatever's in your book.
Yep. That's right.
That's good stuff. It's great because it's not typical content for this niche or industry or anyone. So what I've found in the last 24 months or 36 or whatever is that, and I'm not found, but or whatever, they're either heavy on one side or heavy on the other.
Yep.
So I'm going to introduce something here that we didn't talk about because it's going to be artificial intelligence, of course. If anyone talks to me, I'm going to bring it up. So my belief or my observations, and without getting too technical, and we can debate all that to death, but I don't want to do that. But that, in general, AI, LLMs, they digest processes and make them better. Okay, enough. Just that's, okay. So if I, A plus B equals C divided by D, right? AI can take that. That's very, whatever. They can take processes and optimize and all sorts of things. Well, based on your knowledge of AI and LLMs and the content in your book and your experiences, how do you see something like an LLM or a ChatGPT, not a ChatGPT, or a piece of code, and that's really watering it down, assisting, helping, illuminating, or guiding towards your goals or your ideas and philosophies inside the book? Where does it apply with what you're talking about, artificial intelligence? I don't know.
Well, I touch on that in a chapter in the book. I explicitly stay away from AI in general because
not a bad idea, seriously.
But it's a topic. It's not necessarily the best idea in terms of marketing, which, I mean, AI is the hot thing. Gen AI specifically is the hot thing.
That might be, but that's okay.
The point is this. I talk about this a little bit in the form that I'm very adamant that technology is an enabler. I've always said this for almost 3 decades now, since being a technologist and an evangelist about technology. It's very easy to think that technology is going to solve all your problems, and I thought it would at certain points. But I think what I get back to is you need to be grounded in you first. The LLM is not going to tell you anything about yourself that you should not discover. And if it does, you should not trust it. Now, what it is interesting at doing is helping illuminate things that you may not have paid attention to. Right? Now, that is actually really interesting because it's really good at spotting patterns and trends.
Right.
And so when you think about this from a behavioral standpoint, that's what we are, as a composition of that, right?
Mm-hmm.
So I think to your point, I used AI regularly in thinking about crafting and brainstorming for this book, right?
Oh, okay.
Yeah, absolutely. 100%. Yeah. So I've been very focused on now, that's the question mark is, what good does it do? Well, I don't have access to a huge network of people that I'm going to sit around and talk about this topic with. And most of them that I do know are very busy. And so I think for me, I would banter back and forth with an AI. And then I would banter back and forth with, well, is this the best way to say it for this audience? Or is this the best way? Because the other thing that I think Gen AI really helped me with was trying to understand how other people might perceive it. Mm-hmm. Now, here's what's really interesting is that, I really believe in that human in the loop aspect too, because what I found was that AI is really good at the 80%. It's really hard to get it to help you to get to 90%. And it never gets you to 100%, ever, right? Like, so for instance, I hired, I had 4 beta readers that helped me with this that were experts in their field.
Okay.
3 were in project management and 1 was in HR, right?
Oh, perfect.
And I got invaluable feedback from them that I would not have ever gotten anywhere else. And then on top of that, I hired an editor to help me who just sun, moon, and stars difference in the quality that was output with that, right? So I think to your point was that I felt like AI helped me get myself to about 80, 90, and I used some of the techniques I learned through various classes and teachings to get me to about 90%. But that last 10% that really made the book to me something that I enjoy, I can sit down and read it now and really think, okay, I'm pretty proud of this.
That's your 10%.
Yeah, that was my 10%. Took me a lot of people bringing that team together to help you with this too. So I hope that answers your question about Gen AI. Yeah.
Well, yeah, but see, that's a model for all things with Gen AI and AI in general, right? It's that 10%, even if it's down to 3 to 5%, it doesn't, because that's the human quotient. Because I am a big proponent of, I believe that not everything, a lot of things that we do nowadays, and it segues into what you were talking about, corporations, it's spreadsheet, decision processes are analytical, process driven, and sales. Remember, sales is a process driven thing. All right. Well, anything that is process driven can be duplicated and optimized within an LLM and AI, whatever, anything. So, but unfortunately, if we look at what we do, it's like maybe 95% of the stuff that gets done is a process. And that's the way we've been brought up, right? You go to school, it's a process. You go to work, it's a process. You have a CEO that analyzes and directs the company. He has a process. Ask him. Now, so what I look at is it helps us automate that process, get rid of doing the busy work. Okay. But what AI and LLMs really do to me is it's just a mirror. Yeah. I think if you really get into, because you're prompt, like what you just did, you you bounced ideas off of this thingamajigger, right?
Sure.
You weren't illuminating the thingamajigger, you were illuminating yourself. It's like, oh yeah.
Yep.
And there's nothing wrong with that.
No.
Right. So
it occasionally would come up with little things that I might not have thought of because it has access to more knowledge than I do. But there wasn't a single thing in the book that I thought of that was new to me. The LLMs.
That's a whole nother thing.
Now, that a lot of what I used for was kind of making short lists. It was so it was very good to get a jump start on something, you know. So for instance, if I had blank page syndrome, I could say, hey, I want to talk about this, what do you think? And it would just start, right?
Right.
And I was like, okay, great. And I spent a lot of time custom tuning a lot of GPTs to help me
Right.
with that. I had a very curmudgeon GPT, and I had a very British GPT, and I had a very friendly female GPT that would help me with things. And I had, you know, I say I'm anthropomorphizing this whole thing, but
Understood. Right.
I would tweak them in these personas to help me understand. I want to see a feminine persona. I want to see a masculine persona. I want to see a foreign persona. I want to see, you know, an elderly persona. I want to see this type of profession, you know. So these were things that kind of helped me understand, you know, how to really either get started or to tune it to a point that really made sense to me. But to your point, that's spot on. I think it mirrors you. I really do. It mirrors the human race, at least, right?
Oh, absolutely. And that's my yes. So I had a couple things pop into my head right now. So one of the big challenges right now with AI and LLMs and AGI is how do we make money on it, right? That's quote unquote whatever. So I'm going to go off on a little tangent, but to me, there is no shrink wrapped artificial intelligence right now. There is no, you can't put a SKU on it and sell it off a shelf, and you shouldn't, because what you just went through, your description is yours. Right? You can't go into a library and check that out. You can't go to a Microsoft, Intercom computer center and buy that off the shelf. There's no way.
Yeah.
And what you did is different from what I would do, is different from what someone else would do. It'd be unique to us. So it is truly an individualistic approach in getting things done. Like, and it, you know, there's no good or bad. It's just that's the way it is. Now, once we accept that, this is my tool. This is the way I can work. It opens up rivers and streams and mountains and all sorts of stuff of things that you can do that no one really sat around a C-level marketing table and designed for you, right? There was no grand plan per se that we're going to productize this and call it, you know, Ken's Software Solutions to the world and sell it to Ken and 50,000 other Kens. That's not the way it works anymore.
That's starting to happen.
Why?
It's starting to happen, right? But I think to your point, though, there's a lot of customization behind the scenes. It's the same thing in software development. I mean, it's, you know, you spend, if you have the expertise and the time, you can make anything seem simple. And that's the thing is there's a lot of customization going into Claude and ChatGPT and Gemini. There's a lot of customization going in.
It's customization. It's the learning models. And right now, and this is going to be crazy, it is like chiseling words out on stone. That's the level. Right. And the human in the loop right there is, you still need that. But you're going to see to get away from data rot and things like that. But you're going to see LLMs and AI just start eating on its own, you know, whatever, churning its own data into better, theoretically. But well, so okay, we went off of a big tangent. So out of your book, Ken, I know I want to get back to it though. So, is there a diamond in the rough from the book that you found? You got done with the book, you're reading it. What was there something in the content that you generated at the final product that surprised you? Either you read it or a response to it or something. Yeah, what was it?
I don't know that there really was, because you spend so much time. I mean, it took me every bit of 12 months to write the book and edit it and publish it. And by the time you get to that point, everything is fairly intentional.
Let me back up then and say, was there anything that about the whole process that surprised you at the end? I mean, did someone read the book and get something out of it that you didn't expect? That might be a good question.
You know, funny, that actually is a really good question, because it surprised me. Two audiences surprised me.
Okay.
I've had senior leaders who are senior change managers, senior executives read the book and say, this isn't just for novices and mid-career project managers. This is for seasoned professionals. I was really surprised about that. And they said, because here's why. Number one, your book is very relatable and very funny, because I've lived through most of these stories. And the other thing is that it is intended to be a guidebook. And so I wrote it for my ADHD brain. So there's lots of white space and bullet points, and you can leave off anywhere and come back to it. And that's what really appeals, because it's very short bites of information that you can digest and come back to later, and it's good for reference. The second audience that was really surprising to me is I've had several sales professionals say, I loved it. It was great. It's leadership couched in project management. The discipline is project management, but the principles are just common leadership. And so that really actually surprised me. I never thought that audience would respond to it. Right.
Wow.
Yeah.
Well, that's actually a tip of the hat to the audience, because I see it. I know it just based on what, yeah, you can apply this everywhere, anywhere. But that's good. So that was sales management, huh?
Yeah.
Huh. Well, let me ask you this. On the other side, any regrets?
Yeah, probably not focusing a book on AI instead of project management, giving the timing, but maybe that'll be a second book.
What else?
The other one that was interesting to me was a lot of two of my beta readers specifically were seasoned. One of them was my instructor during my PMP course, and the other was, a colleague that I've met over the years and respect them very much. And they said, I wouldn't recommend it for this book. You've kind of gone to where you need to go with this book, and you've met your stated objective. But I really think you should think about the way of working, like how to do. He said, what you don't get into in your book is, I talk about a signature system in the book about how you need to build your signature system. And I think about it like a toolbox, right?
Right.
And, a lot of what I'm offering can go in that or not, depending on what you prefer. But what I don't get into is a very prescriptive, here's how I did it in my career, right? And so they were saying, it'd be really beneficial to help young PMs who are looking for that franchise business model. How long do you cook the fries for? How do you greet the customer? Those kinds of very
more
things.
Tactical. I was just going to say,
Yep. And that may be something, maybe not a regret, but maybe something that is a little bit of kindling in the fire to think about.
That's more, I get that. That's not a regret. That's actually pretty good. That's that's your next book or your next series, Ken.
Might be. Yeah.
Wow. But speaking of, you got anything else on the docket? What do you? That's a lot.
It is. Yeah. So I've got two things right now I'm focused on, and one of them is I'm completing a coursework series on scaling AI. So it has nothing to do with project management, except that it's all about me understanding industrial strength tools to grow unicorn businesses for SMEs, right? So I'm learning. So I'm learning from some of the best right now at how to like some of their track. It's pretty impressive. What I thought I was halfway decent, but after being in just one of their cohorts, I'm moving into the next build lab, where I'm actually going to accompany them on implementing their solution inside of one of their customers.
Okay.
And so that kind of stuff, where I'm looking at how to scale a company using industrial strength AI is going to be really interesting. And then the other thing that I have in the back of my brain is my next book, which I have this real passion for middle managers. They don't get a lot of love. They're put in one of the hardest positions in the world, I believe, for knowledge workers.
Mm-hmm.
And so I'm thinking of something to do with the tentative title I have is Relax Harder. Basically, it's the kung fu of middle management, right? So we'll see how that goes. But
I would recommend a survival guide, because it is my belief that middle management is going to go away.
Really interesting, because of LLMs?
LLMs, AI. One of my postulates is AI replaces the middleman.
Interesting.
Yeah,
think about the middle manager.
The middle person.
The middle person.
Anything between you and what you want to achieve.
I could see that. And I wonder, is it going to replace executives? I don't know. What do you think?
Oh yeah, the CEOs are gone. The C-suite. Because like we said earlier, they manage in the process.
Yeah.
There's a process. Yeah. And some smart guy, not me, some other dude said the day of the one person, $1 billion company is not that far away.
That's actually the people that I'm taking a course from right now. The person that said that. Yeah.
Oh, okay. So, and of course, and this 36 months ago, people might have laughed. Yeah, sure. Another sci-fi movie.
I swear I was thinking it was completely impossible until I sat in their course. I first off sat in one of their sales sessions. This is where I learned about evaluation engines. And so that's a whole nother level of LLMs that just blows your mind. And
I know. Yeah.
So what was weird is I was reading it was Ethan Mollick's book about AI, and they both talked about the same thing. And how Ethan wrote his book was he used evaluation engines, and they used evaluation engines. But I kind of built my own evaluation engine, and it's called SteveAl. It's called SteveAl. That's what I call it.
Who's Steve?
And so Steve is my eval engine. I run everything I do through Steve to see what the score is. And when the score is below a certain amount, I basically ask it how I can improve the score, and it gives me very specific things to do to improve the score. And so I've changed those things.
Genius.
Yeah. So,
excellent.
Then what they showed me though was a whole nother level of how to do that, and it involves a vectorized database. It involves a whole nother set of 100 plus samples of different things that you do. And so it takes time. It takes time to set it up. But I'm going to tell you something. In just 10 samples with 5 tweaks on the engine, I was able to see, a 30 to 40% improvement in the responses. It was, and I'm going to tell you, they got really super close to being human-like. It was scary, right? So these are the things that, like, I'm learning these things about how, these techniques on how to do these things, and it is.
Well, let me throw this scenario at you in terms of an eval engine of sorts, right? I mean, evaluate 30 different responses, RFPs.
Yeah, that's it.
Right. Evaluate my existing, my existing copier fleet.
Yeah. Yeah.
So what a big thing is right now is, how is salespeople can use LLMs, right? You can leverage whatever. Well, and there's a big change in the selling environment. Everything's changing. These are the talk tracks of the current sales. Everything's changing in sales, but more is changing on the purchasing side. More is changing on how the way companies buy stuff versus how we sell stuff.
Yeah, interesting.
And I think the way we sell stuff, we're so self-centered that we're missing what's going on out there. I mean, it's in the olden days, it was like GM implemented EDI, electronic data interchange. This is back, and they were the first ones that POs were there were no longer written POs in GM.
Right.
I mean, you eliminated 40 to 50% of the businesses of your suppliers right off the bat. Because they did not have computers. They were faxing or sending PO. So EDI. So it's the same basic idea, right? We're concentrating on how to change how we sell. We're not paying attention as to how they're going to buy, and they're going to use engines. They're going to do stuff like that. Where these sales guys, your engine doesn't care about my charisma.
No, there's no relationship. Yeah.
No, I'm not going to tell the AI purchasing agents that you're fish on the wall. We're not going to build any bond and rapport. And unfortunately, it's going to commoditize 90% of the decision process, but there's going to be that 5%. There's going to be that niche of professional connectors or whomever you want to call them. No more transactions, no more inbound, no more of that stuff. All that is going to go away because their AI is going to talk to my company's AI because I've just eliminated distribution, sales. How many middlemen go away?
Yeah, boom. All of them. Yeah.
For all of them.
Yeah.
And these two AIs talk. Yeah. So
that's going to be interesting.
It's not 10 years away. That's what's even crazy.
That is crazy that it's not, because I've been trying to figure that out from the macro standpoint for a while now.
Right.
And I can't get a good read on it for a lot of reasons. But like all the prognosticators are believing that AGI is what's going to flip that switch. But then like we're seeing that there's a lot of push towards this trough of disillusionment with it, which is Gartner's hype cycle.
Yeah.
And AI has been overhyped, and now it's going to start falling short. And there's lots of reasons why that is. But I was talking about that with my cohort, and they're a big believer that the trough of disillusionment, the typical self-inflicted wounds where people don't understand the use cases where AI can be. But I don't know that there's, I don't, given the trough of disillusionment, that tells me that people, you see all this market research where people have tried out these numbers about how 80% of the people in the company have used Gen AI. That doesn't tell me anything. That really doesn't. That just means you've opened up a chat interface and looked at it for a little while. That doesn't mean you're actually using it. Yeah. So like, what are the actual use cases that are driving it? I mean, in my course at Northwestern that I went through, I got to see how I think it was about 200 use cases they brought out, and one of them was Uber, and that's a whole another level of like they were just a data company. That's all they were. That's all they
Right.
are.
That's all they are.
And so
That's all any
everything.
company is. If you, I
No,
mean,
no, it's not. That's the problem. It's that many companies haven't adjusted their DNA to be
well,
data first companies,
right,
right?
right.
So there's too much friction in the organization to get there. And so they think of AI as a kind of like with your phone case. You buy the phone that does all the
Absolutely.
hard work and AI just goes around to protect it, right? That's what you're talking about is the sea change that's coming.
It
That's what
is,
I'm interested in.
and well, the structures, the hierarchies. I mean, they're going to fall. This is not something that's going to take a decade or two. And the hierarchies that are established. Can we? This phrase I learned, I think, from Xerox or someone who analyzed Xerox, is the strengths. Your current day strengths are tomorrow's weaknesses. If you are
Sure.
the best photocopier manufacturer in the world, or the best mainframe manufacturer, IBM, Xerox, those strengths are they're the albatross. One day they're going to pull you down. And when you talk about even the trough, it isn't that there isn't a trough, it's the time condense. Right? The trough it occurs, and it's not going to take 3 years to get out of the trough. I think we're already out of it. But I even go even higher up the chain. Yeah, there's no right now. There's no hyperbole in AI. Right now, there is none because, and I swear to God, I see it every day. Something you don't even imagine. It's like, wait a minute, AI help cells talk to each other. Yeah, but these cells were created artificially. Yeah. What?
See, this is what I don't. This is what's really strange about this is that we talk. Are you familiar with the term jagged frontier?
I've heard of it, but
okay. So the jagged frontier basically says that AI is not progressing at an even rate as would other technologies, right?
Oh, okay.
So essentially, what you can see is in one use case, you can see where AI completely still fails and people can't figure it out, and then you can see another one where, like for instance, high frequency trading. That's largely AI driven at this point, right? So we never see that, we never understand it, we don't know what's going on there. But sales is another good example that I'm sure I'm seeing a lot more evidence of voice enabled sales agents happening, right?
Yes.
So that's a huge one too.
Yeah, that's it. And I think the Philippines, it's actually going to impact their economy if it already hasn't, because so many companies have already gotten rid of their call centers that were based in the Philippines because of some chatbot, which, and that's getting better month after month after month. It's just, so that's, anyway, just, it rolls so quickly that I think back to your original point of defining how work is done.
Yeah.
That might be of, and I'm glad to hear that you're dipping deeply into the AI side.
Oh yeah.
I think that's
it's the way of the future. Yeah, I mean it's.
But I don't know what that future is. That's just it.
Well, that's the thing is, right? I mean, we don't learn self-defense tactics so that we never get into a fight. I don't want to go get into a fight, but I've spent the better part of 15 years learning self-defense because at some point I may need that tool, right? And so the same thing with Gen AI, in my opinion, is that I think that a lot of people want to rebrand themselves as being this AI leader. I'm not interested in that. This is another set. It's a bigger toolbox. It's like I went from my little hammer to a set of DeWalt power tools all of a sudden, or perhaps beyond. But it's going to level up the playing field, and if people don't understand how to leverage it and use it, or at least are familiar with it and what it can and can't do, they're not going to be in a good place.
Right. Well, I agree with the analogy and the metaphor. It's not a tool, it is the toolbox. It's it.
I hope not. I hope not.
No. Don't be afraid. I get it, but no. And then you say you don't know how people. It's going to come down to such a basic level that we won't even think about it.
Yeah, I agree with that.
It's like the electricity. Everyone was. I wasn't there, but people said, "Well, what if you're back in the days when they were starting to put electricity out?" It's like, what if your electricity went out? You're going to have to go out and light your lanterns. Well, yeah, but whatever. Same with AI, I think, but that's only basically similar. I think it goes even stellar scopes way up.
Oh, sure.
On that. Yeah, but anyway, wow. Okay, Ken, we need back to your book. If there were one sentence that you could leave, if you were being interviewed by, let's see, who one of the big publishers are, you're on the there's no good talk shows around anymore.
No,
Jesus.
no.
Oh man. Okay, imagine you're sitting across from Johnny Carson. You're like with Stephen King and Tom Clancy coming out with your, just got a brand new book. What's the one thing you want to leave with that audience about your book?
Yeah, I think what I would encourage them to do is to take the time to invest in yourself and to ensure that you're leaving a legacy, you're living a life of legacy that you're satisfied and deeply, deeply grateful for. And that's what I want for everybody with this. I mean, the whole goal of the book is to help project managers or whoever decides to pick it up to feel a little bit better about the life that they're living and to really feel good about the fact that they have some agency and some autonomy and some power in their own life and to be able to see that path that they should walk, right? That's it.
Excellent. That's a good way to end it, Ken. Thank you.
Yeah.
Thank you very much. So, it's Ken Stewart. Ken, you're on LinkedIn, right?
Yes.
Easy to
LinkedIn.
find out there.
Easy to find. Yep.
Okay.
You got it.
And check out his book. Get a look at it. Easy enough. What's the name of the book again, Ken?
Burn That Project Down. It's
Burn
on
That
Amazon.
Project Down.
Yep.
Yeah, Beds Are Burning. Anyway, different subject. Well, thanks, Ken. I appreciate it. For everyone else, reach out to Ken, get the book. Any questions at all, look for him, connect with him on LinkedIn. And with me, same thing, dude. Just if anyone wants any questions about AI, Ken, I look forward to maybe doing this again with maybe a focus on artificial intelligence because you've got a good angle on it, and I like that. Either way, all right, everyone, have a good one, and happy 2024.
Thank you. Take care.